Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Games with Kellie and Andrew. I'm Andrew.
And I sure am Kellie.
Happy 100 episodes, Kellie.
Woo! Woo! Yippee! Ah, waha!
I wish the audience could see that Kellie is clicking all of the, in Google chat, what they called poppers, the excited poppers.
Oh. Yeah.
They couldn't see that, obviously. They could probably hear the click, 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 click. But now they know. 100 episodes
Yippee!
of Talking Games with Kellie and Andrew, as of right now, at time of listening, have been released.
Yippee!
That's crazy.
I
feel
know.
like literally no one could have listened to any of these episodes and it would still be an accomplishment. But thankfully, there are some people listening and we value them deeply. I do. Do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just
I
making sure.
absolutely do.
Last episode was about my favorite video games and favorite video game experiences. Before that was Kellie's. We got something a little weird this time. A little unusual. A little not entirely related to video games. A little history lesson.
Yeah.
In 1968,
Oh.
the United... Oh, yeah, you're right. No, we'll just talk about us. Hey, Kellie.
Yeah.
There's no structure to this one. I wrote out like a general timeline, so I didn't like forget anything important about our friendship.
Oh, I see.
But let's just take things from each other.
Okay.
Let's just go back and forth and share stories. And if you know us and you think there's some connection you might have to this story, stay tuned because we're not going to be afraid to name drop people today. We're going to be very specific about places, times, and people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
How many years have we known each other?
8.
Yeah, that's kind of gross. Not that we've known each other 8 years, just that in my brain, I'm like, no, that's 5 years ago because I'm seeing 2015. I'm like, it's 2020 now. No, it's not. It's 2023.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild.
What are we going to do for our 8-year friend anniversary?
I don't know. We're going to have to come up with something 8 themed.
Yeah.
We could play billiards because you have to hit the 8 ball at the end.
No, I'm good. I'll just get us started with letting you know how this happened, how we came to be. I started college a year after Kellie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you tell me, because I know the details, but I don't want to get anything wrong. Kind of give a gear up the year before I got to school of like where you lived and who you knew that connected us together, because I don't want to get any details wrong.
Sure. So I started college in 2014. I went with 2 of my close friends. We all went to the same college. My friends Elena and Nicholas. I lived in Olson Hall, which at the time was sort of designated for journalism and mass communication students. So the JMC program at Kent was really all-encompassing. So it was like journalism, multimedia, graphic design. It was just a big category. So a lot of people lived in Olson. And I remember when I lived there, there was no air conditioning and it was so hot. But anyway, that's not an important part of the story. But
yes, it is. It is important.
It's pretty important. So my friends Nicholas and Elena, they lived in the Honors College dorm, which was actually right across the way from Olson. So I spent a lot of time over there. And my friend Nicholas was like, hey, you know what? I really want to become an RA next year, a resident assistant. And I was like, okay. I mean, I don't really see that as a path for you because you've never been like responsible for a group of people before, but not to air out Nicholas's business.
I hope,
anything.
Nick, if you're listening, hey, I hope you're enjoying Kellie talk about you.
But we supported him, and eventually he did get approved to be an RA, and he was approved to start as an RA at Olson Hall next year. So funnily enough, I had actually been approved to go live at the Honors College, even though I wasn't an honors student. So we kind of switched. So I moved into the Honors College hall, and Nicholas moved into Olson. And lo and behold, he was an RA for an all-boys floor because Olson was mixed. And then there were like 2 floors that were all the same gender and then 2 floors that were kind of mixed. So I don't know if that's different now. I don't think that. Anyway, the point is that I spent a lot of time over there because I didn't really know anyone in the Honors College anymore. My friend Elena had moved and was now living off campus. So I was spending a lot of time over in Olson Hall because I was still good friends with Nicholas. And most of the friends that I made my freshman year were either through him or, well, I'm pretty sure they were all through him, which is a trend that you'll see. So anyway, like I said, it was an all boys floor. So it was kind of like, I was over there and it was kind of like, this is a lot of boys. And some good, some bad. And it was fun and it was also not fun. So anyway, one of the residents on Nicholas's floor was Andrew,
That's me.
Who is my perfect co-host, as we know. And we met because how do we even meet? We met because we were down in the lounge and we were talking about video games. And I was like, well, I know about video games. And Andrew was like, oh, do you? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I proved to him that I did because I had some deep Kingdom Hearts lore in my back pocket. And
I think the funny part about that, well, so that night was half in the lounge, and I remember that conversation happened in Dylan and BJ's room with like 18 people.
Yes.
I don't know why we ended up there. That was Olson Hall, 2nd floor, far end. And the funny thing was, because like I wasn't trying to like mansplain video games to you, but I said, oh, I love video games, and you said, oh, I love them too, and I'm like, oh yeah, you like play a lot of things, and you were like, ask me any question and I will know the answer.
Well,
it wasn't like I was like, well, do you like, I wasn't trying to like test you. You asked me.
Let me qualify this. So in my experience in my life, when you're talking to a man, yes. And I'm not saying this as an offense to you, Andrew, because
you should assume the worst of all men. I'm not feeling bad about that.
Typically, when you say that you like video games, they'll be like, "Oh, what do you play?" Or they'll be like, "Oh," and then they'll give you a little pop quiz. So I was already on the defense, but Andrew wasn't. Andrew wasn't
quiz
like
me. Well, I mean, I was because you told me to, and then I said, "Okay, who made Kingdom Hearts?" And you said Tetsuya Nomura, and I was like, "Okay, you passed." Yeah. Well, I was like amazed actually. I was like, "Oh my," because like nobody knows that. It has nothing to do with like man or woman. It's like if nobody knows Tetsuya Nomura's name, which like I mean a lot of people do now, but like it just was crazy to meet somebody because like in high school I didn't know like the thoroughest of gamers. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of us that were really into it, but like first thing college, I want to say this probably happened like early September, right?
Oh yeah. It was very early in the year, and because how do I explain this? I started seeing someone on Nicholas's floor, and I just ended up spending a lot of time there between Nicholas and this other person. And I ended up becoming better friends with this other person's friends and stuff than I was with them. And then we stopped seeing each other. It was not a great situation, but I was still around all the time. And I was like, hey, what's up? Thought you got rid of me. Sorry. It was like, I probably was the most obnoxious person. But
yeah. No, you weren't. You were great.
It was a span of like September through early October. And that was like when you and I started becoming friends and when you and I got close. And then obviously the radio show was a big part of that too.
Well, because I think... So we'll go back to the radio show but it's not linear right now. I remember that Halloween of 2015, I want to say it was like the day before that situation ended. Like it was very, very close to the ending. Yes. You and I were just sitting there, and I think that was the first day, because you and I were casual friends, but like we had a very big heart-to-heart on Halloween of 2015, because I was not a partier. I did not really leave the dorm a lot. I was friends with a lot of people. I got around a lot, but like I didn't leave the dorm for parties because I wasn't a drinker. I had social anxiety. So I would like receive people as they returned.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you had been out with a group of people and you came back, and then you and I just like, while you're in costume, some kind of costume.
I was
and
a
I'm
panda
just,
bear.
You were a panda bear and I was Andrew. We had this like really deep heart to heart in somebody else's room. It was neither of our rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how Olsen worked. You had lots of like important formative experiences, and rarely did they occur where they would naturally, like they were never in your own room.
Yeah.
Because like my roommate situation was rough that year. My roommate did not leave the room at all. Not just like me, like didn't leave the building. Like he would not leave the room and did not want people in the room. So I was basically forced to, if I wanted to speak to other people, I was not in my room.
Mm-hmm. We
so
were
that's
in Chris
how
and Brendan's room.
Yeah, okay. I knew we were leaning on somebody's bed. I don't know why that, but like.
And we were eating Oreos.
We were. How do you? Wow.
I remember because I was dressed as a panda and I thought it was funny that we were eating Oreos.
Yeah, that is funny. I remembered like the general. I could have been Nick Peters' bed though, but like that's why I was like, I know it was somebody else's room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I didn't go to your room even once, so that was nothing ever happened at Stouffer.
Yeah.
Because
nobody was over there. It was just me.
And why would they be?
Right.
People like gathered in hallways of Olsen. You know, that's how things happen. My picture, I'm going to pull it up. Obviously, the audience can't see this, but my contact picture of Kelly has not changed since 2015. And I was drinking a chocolate milk, like straight from the half-gallon carton, and the little like brown tamper band protective part, the circle part, fell off. And Kelly picked it up and just pretended it was a monocle for like 30 minutes. And my contact picture is her in a beanie holding the monocle, looking off into the distance, and has been that since probably September of 2015, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But early in 2015, I'll tell this story since Kelly gets introduced after the start. Somebody posts posters all over Olsen, and then I think in the student center that says like, do you want to be part of a video game radio show? And I kind of knew friend of the show Cameron at the time. We weren't super close yet, but we like kind of knew each other. And then I was pretty close with Colin, who, you know, Kelly would know later, but she wasn't connected to this story yet. Me and Colin specifically saw this poster and were like, hey, you and I have been talking about like Persona 4 a lot. Why don't we like go check this out? And it was just like it was basically like, are you interested? Meet me here at this time. And it was in the student center. So we all met up, got wow bow or something weird. And it was me, Colin, Cameron, Chris Cherrick, who was the host. He was the one who posted these posters. Danny Murphy, and then a couple other names who I cannot recall. There were some people that didn't end up on the show that were present. I'm sorry. There's the history of this show is kind of like old and faded in some ways, but so we all like are like, yeah, let's do it. Let's audition. So we decided that we'll go in as a team. So we went to the Black Squirrel Radio booth for audition days. We didn't have a name picked yet, but they were like, okay, you got a show. So we were Friday at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We had a show, and we decided to call it The Cast of Us, which is because, you know, it's funny. It's just a pun. And The Last of Us was very fresh on everybody's mind at the time. I'm not going to give assignment to who said that because I don't remember who came up with that. If you're listening right now and you came up with it, I'm sorry. Tell me. I'll do a what's the word? A correction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I think we had like one, maybe two episodes, and I think you had heard about it because you heard about it because it was a bunch of people from Olsen, right?
Right.
So you come up to me because you and I were friends, and you're like, "Let me in.
Yeah.
I want in."
I was like, "Get me on that show. I love talking.
I love talking.
I love yipping and yapping."
So I'm like, oh, okay. And we're like talking in the hallway directly next to the room of Chris Jarek, the host. So I go down. I want to say he like had his door open. He was playing Destiny. And I just knock and I'm like, hey, this is Kelly. She wants to be on the show. And, you know, he did like, I guess like a soft interview because that's how you do it, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you knew your stuff and you were pleasant to talk to. So that's kind of all it took to get on BSR.
Yeah. It was, yeah. And it was very much like the thing about the cast of us, and this was probably established a little bit later on, but there was like a rotating cast of people. Sometimes people would come on and sometimes they would not. And sometimes somebody would be here for this episode and not for another episode. So I think maybe it started as like, oh, Kelly will come on for an episode. And then like if she wants to stick around, she can. Which ended up being, I was there for like pretty much almost all of it. Right.
No, I mean, until like basically the end. Because it was a rotating cast and it was confusing and kind of difficult to manage. So then it got to a point where it's like, oh, why don't we just like, it's a 2-hour show. Let's just basically split it. So early on, it was like, we'd be like told, because Chris would just manage who was going to be on and be like, okay, here's who's on hour 1, here's who's on hour 2. And it would be kind of random. So like sometimes you'd be on with Danny Murphy and then later his cousin Ryan Murphy joined. Jack Beja was on and you knew that Jack Beja and Sierra would be on and you'd be talking about Destiny. Danny and Ryan Murphy would be on, you'd be talking about Smash and Kingdom Hearts. There was always kind of like this flow and we talked about news, but it was mostly just, you know, shooting the poo. You just talked about random stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very fun.
And then after a certain point, it kind of just became established that one half was... So I ended up staying on the full show because I would help Chris with like managing stories and stuff. And then other people would cycle in and out. So there'd be the one half that's like the Murphy hour with like Jack Beja and Sierra and sometimes some other people. And then there would be the Cameron, Kelly, Andrew hour.
Yeah.
And Chris still there, of course. He was there. He was the through line. And that was just, we're just such good friends at this point because Cameron and I lived near each other. Kelly, we couldn't get rid of, was around all the time.
I was like a leech. I was like, let me in there.
Yeah. So Cameron and I at this point, we like had grown a lot closer and we were getting lunches every week and stuff. I mean, every week is an understatement. We got them like multiple times a week at the Quaker. I do know that we were getting lunch at Quaker and we'd sit in the same exact seat every week if it was available because we'd show up but after my history class, which ended at 3. So we go to Quaker after that and we called it CAMEW, CAMEW, because we would go and we'd eat at the same table and it was a 3-seat table and we named the seat Wallace.
Yes.
So it was Cameron and Andrew's meal eaten with Wallace. Cameo.
But the fact that it was a 3-seat table was almost destiny, if you think about it.
Yes.
Like that seat was always waiting to be filled.
Right. And instead of making it Cameron and Andrew's meal eaten with Kelly, it stayed Wallace. So it became Cameron and Andrew's meal eaten with Wallace and Kelly. It became Camuke, as we called it.
Yes.
So Kelly started joining as much as she could because I think you had you had obligations sometimes, but you were there as much as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that started early 2015. Well, not early 2015, early of that school year. Ironically, I think one of the earliest video game memories I have with you is from November of 2015. Because you and I were both super pumped for Fallout 4, which had been announced at E3 that year. And you didn't have a car that year, right?
No, I did not.
Okay. Nor did I, because I lived in Olson, you lived in Johnson. And the only place you could walk to that had video games, I mean, you could walk anywhere. The only place that was in a reasonable walking distance that sold video games was the Exchange in downtown Kent. So Kelly and I made the trek, which, like, in retrospect, it wasn't very far. But, like, it was this big, exciting thing. We're like, oh, we're going to get Fallout 4. So, like, we bought this game day one. I just remember the way there, we were just, like, talking about, like, what it could be like. And the way back, we were just, like, dancing with our copies in our hands.
Yeah. I remember you called them in advance to ask if they had copies and if they could set 2 copies aside for us. And I always remember being very grateful for that because it was a very considerate thing to do, something that I wouldn't think to do.
Yeah,
I would just show up.
It was a big launch.
Yeah, and I would just show up and be like, "Hey, you got a copy for me?" And they'd be like, "No, sorry, sister, they're all sold out." So I remember that distinctly, and I remember, like I said, I mentioned this. I can't remember if it was last week's episode or the week before, but when I got it and I got back to my dorm room to play it, my roommate was asleep, so I had to be really, really quiet. I had the volume down to 2, literally, so I could barely hear the game because I didn't think to use headphones. I didn't even think I had any, so it was just funny.
I mean, I did the same. I think my roommate might have also been asleep. Did we have the same experience?
Probably.
But I had like these wireless headphones that plugged into my TV at the time. Which, like, in retrospect, why didn't I just buy a pair of headphones and plug it into my PS4 controller? Oh, well. So I remember I played with those. I think I got yelled at. It was either that game or Metal Gear Solid 5. I was playing at, like, 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and my roommate, like, woke up, and he was like, Andrew. And, like, I didn't hear him because I had my headphones on. And eventually I heard him, and I, like, moved a headphone, and I was like, yeah? And he's just like, it's 11:30. And I was just like, yeah, because like my TV did not face him and I had headphones on, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but like you have to accept a little bit of click clack of the controller sometimes.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tension in that roommate situation. We don't need to go into that. That does not have connection to the history of Kellie and Andrew specifically. It probably contributed to our friendship because I was always never in my room.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could say never in my room. I don't know why I needed to always.
I was always never in my room. Yeah, it seems a little redundant.
And like Kelly said, Olsen did not have air conditioning. So for the first like month of the year, you had to hang out in like common spaces or lounges just not to boil alive.
Yeah.
So that was our first semester of college. I mean, I knew that the first semester is like the most pivotal part, but that's pretty important.
Yeah. And the truth is that like I was, there was just a lot going on. I mean, outside of the context of yours and mine's like friendship, there was just a lot going on, around us.
Yeah.
A lot of drama, a lot of like.
Oh, a lot of drama.
A lot of drama. So I think that is also part of it is like when you meet somebody that is not
dramatic
and annoying like that. Not that that's annoying, but when you meet someone who's not a part of it, you kind of are like, you hang out with them more because obviously they're not bringing that drama to you. Now, I will say I was in part of the drama, so I can't really say too much, but
yeah, but I to put it bluntly and simply, I did not have a dating life in college. Maybe not my choice, but I didn't have a dating life in college, which mostly connects you to a lack of drama,
That's true. Yeah,
so,
dating always can be a source for drama.
In college, yes, for sure.
Yes.
So I was the pure child who was not connected to any of the drama, but very, I guess, fun to talk to. Well, you talked to me for years, so I guess I must be okay to talk to.
Yeah, you're all right.
Thanks. So we went home for the winter, enjoyed our Christmas breaks, came back. Early in that spring semester, a couple things happened. I talked a little bit about this, and so did Kelly. Fire Emblem Fates came out. And I feel like that was the first time. Obviously, Fallout 4 we all played together, but like, let's be honest, it kind of disappointed a little bit, so it was kind of hard to talk about. Fire Emblem Fates, I feel like, was the first game where, like, especially you and I were just, like, fully in sync playing this game together, like, talking about it constantly and playing it constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have such fond memories of that game, not for the game reason, but for, like, the context around it.
Yeah. I was very excited for that game because it had already released in Japan, and it had been out for, like, a year in Japan already. So it was
a while.
Yeah. So it was, like, I had so many, like, story spoilers and, like, I don't know. I was just very excited for it because I loved Awakening so much, which was the last Fire Emblem game before it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and And it's true. I mean, you build those fond memories like when you play something at the same time as somebody and you talk about it. I mean, we talked about it all the time. So it was like,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I associate the game with, you know?
We probably talked about it on the cast of us like several hours collectively.
Oh, yeah.
Early in that semester, we also commenced, as I wrote down, our lunches. So we saw each other very regularly. But I remember I worked on what was called a flash cast at Kent, which was a like a morning newscast. And that wrapped up around like 11. So you would do this little newscast live, and then you would, go about your day. And somebody who worked on it, I'm not going to name drop her, but we were sort of starting to get into the throes of talking, not speaking, but talking,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, let's get lunch after this. So we go to get lunch, and lo and behold, I see Kelly sitting at a table, and she's sitting with my other friend and her friend Lydia, and then a third person who I do not know, who much history would come from, Itwa. So I'm like, oh, it's Kelly. I go up, hey Kelly, hey Lydia, hi other person. Introduce, oh, this is Itwa, and I'm like, oh, this is person. So the five of us sit there, we're having a great time, and at some point you're like, yeah, we have class before this. Like you had a class till right before that, and I had the flashcast every week. So we're like, let's meet up. Let's make this happen every week. The person that I brought did not sustain, but the lunches did. And I feel like those lunches are just such an interesting and pivotal thing because, like, it was always me and you and Lydia and Itwa, but there was just this cycle, this absolute cavalcade of random people that would always join. And, like, you never know who would be there that week.
Yeah. It was certainly an interesting situation, especially because people would come who you'd be like, oh, I didn't know we were cool like that. People.
Well, that was the thing. If you were eating at Kent Market too, which was the upstairs cafeteria, which, like, that's a stupid name in retrospect, but like,
yeah.
If you were eating at the cafeteria and somebody kind of knew you and you were in like a group, they would sit with you.
Mm-hmm.
There was no boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just those lunches lasted like years. Like we did those 2016. They lasted into the next semester and into 2017. We hung out before we saw Hillary Clinton at Kent together, but we had lunch at KM2 first.
Yes, I remember. Wow.
I have a picture from that day of you. You stole Cameron's phone. I don't know if he went with us, but he was there that day. And you stole his phone and took a selfie and made a stupid face. But I took a picture of you taking the selfie.
Oh, wow.
And it's such a classic. And there's just so many positive memories around that time. But those lunches are absolutely those are so valuable to me. And I'm happy now and we're living wonderful lives. But I would love to relive those days.
Yeah, it was really, oh my gosh. That's so funny because it's like, I don't remember like that version of me is like a different girl, you know what I mean? Like she was a lot more outgoing. She was just having a good time. There she is. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like, and it's so cliche, but it's like you really don't understand the things, the moment that you're in until after it's passed. You know, like you can look back at stuff and long for it again, and want to relive it or see it again through the eyes that you have now. But it's to me, it's almost impossible to appreciate a moment when you're in it. I only ever feel like I can appreciate things after they're done. Not to get existential or sad or anything, but
but it's true. Those lunches were so normal to us at the time, and now I'm just the concept of having a weekly lunch with somebody's not that crazy. I mean, we see each other every week now. Right. This show is a perfect connecting tissue for us. But the thought of eating lunch in the same place and random people appearing and joining every time, basically.
Yeah.
That's such a foreign concept now. And that's not something we could have appreciated then because you were accustomed to it.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's hard not to get a little existential.
Yeah, it is. It is hard.
There's a lot of in between before the next like chunk of our history as pals, because it kind of was cyclical, you know. We went to lunch all the time, we hung out all the time, we went to Quaker Steak in the basement of the student center, way more than a human being should. We're all gonna develop diseases in like 15 years, and they're gonna string it back to that Quaker Steak.
Yeah, I'm excited for the lawsuit money to come in.
Yeah, we will all have the same, like, you and I think I ate Quaker Steak probably 4 times a week at least.
Oh my God, wow.
Did you not? How you had to have eaten it a lot.
Probably like twice a week, I would say.
I feel like everybody goes on like a Friday.
Right, because they had karaoke.
And then, right. And then I went twice a week for CAMU, so that's 3 times minimum. And then there would always be like somebody who was like, do you want to grab food at Quaker? Because it was the sit-down restaurant.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it was more than twice a week.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, karaoke. Why'd you have to bring that up? Okay, there's a story related to karaoke that I want to tell about you.
Oh, no.
Am I allowed to tell? It's it happened on the 3rd floor at a Smash tournament, I think after karaoke. Am I allowed to tell it?
Yeah, you can tell it.
Okay. So
no.
this is every week they had Smash tournaments at Kent, and I was like sort of an attendee. I was friends with like Ryan Murphy, like I said, and then my good friend Shay, and then Alex Wadley would go to these Smash tournaments every week, and that was in like the big time of Smash 4, and there was this other person who I'll choose not to name, but a young yeah. I mean, I would be shocked if he was listening, but if he is, he might not remember, so it's okay. This young man who was there all the time, and he was also big at karaoke. Everybody knew him at karaoke because he loved to sing every week. And he was, you know, an attractive young man.
He was like tangentially friends with us. Like he was friends of a friend.
Yeah, he was good friends with Ryan Murphy, so I knew him that way.
Right. And I knew him through Ryan.
Yes. Anyway, so, and this is long before Kelly's long-term committed relationship, just to be clear. But Kelly was a little smitten with him.
Oh, this is bad.
And so he's coming up before his Smash game, and he's like, oh, like I got, and Kelly, you're like, oh, you'll do great. You're just trying to be like nice, but also like you're smitten, so you're a little embarrassed. And he's like, yeah, I got to get in the zone, get in the auto zone. And then he looks at me and he's like, get in the Kelly zone. And you like giggle with like a snort, and you just go, I know a lot about that because I'm Kelly. And that was not me messing it up. That she said it horribly. And then I think that may have slightly eliminated his flirt because he didn't know what to say then.
I
love bringing that trauma back up.
When I tell you guys I have 0 game, absolutely, I am not lying. Like, the reality is I'm in the relationship I am now. I'm very happy. We've been together for a long time. That was pure luck. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it's still happening. I am not good at
getting
flirting.
in the zone.
Well, I'm always in the zone because I'm Kelly, if you didn't know.
And like his line wasn't that good, but your response was just
right.
Whew.
It was rough. And you know what's funny is this is a continuing trend. It's like and it's like every person that I had a crush on had some horrible story of me saying something just incredibly stupid. And I'm sure Andrew got to witness quite a few of that.
Yeah, well, because Kelly and I have always been entirely platonic, which means I get to be there at every phase watching her crushes. And I'm so happy for you and that you're married. But like, if you were single for life, I would be entertained forever. So I'm glad you're not, for your sake.
Yeah, me too.
We kind of finished up our dorm days. My second year, I lived in Stouffer, which is the same place Kelly lived her first year. And then where'd you move to? Centennial B?
Yes. Yep.
which is, you moved to a different dorm with Lydia, who we mentioned earlier, and so we still saw each other plenty, but we didn't live as close of proximity, and you didn't have a reason to be in Olsen every single waking moment anymore. Nor I was there definitely a lot more than you, but still we saw each other plenty. I cannot pinpoint even the semester that it happened, but I know cast of us had some struggles because it changed times, which made it difficult for everybody to be there. So I feel like cast of us, as valuable as it was, and I think ultimately it served as a precursor to what we're doing right now in a lot of ways. I do think it kind of fizzled out at that phase. Can you pinpoint the time? Because I can't. It happened.
I couldn't.
Okay.
I could not.
So yeah, that was it for that show. But still, I value those times very highly. The many, many hours we spent in that little radio studio were extremely positive. I don't think anybody listened to that. We had like one listener usually. But it was fun, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Listeners are not the reason to do things as much as having fun doing it.
Yeah.
So, late 2017, Kelly followed me. No, we both independently decided to move to Eagles Landing, which is an apartment complex in Kent. A cesspit, if you will. That place is pretty nasty.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
But it's fine. It was a great time. Well, it was a time.
Let's think about the pool at Eagles Landing.
Ugh. The pool was like a swamp. It had like a green, like thick layer on top of it that you'd have to like get through.
Yeah.
And they'd clean it once a year.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, it's beautiful. And then it'd be crazy busy for like a week, and then it would turn green. Nobody used that pool.
No.
Remember the game room? Did you ever go in there?
I don't. Maybe. But
It was like right by the pool.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I can't remember.
I went in there once. It had like a pool table, but you had to go get stuff from the office, which meant you could only use it from like 9 to 3 p.m., like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on weekdays. It's like, well, that's stupid. And I had a TV with like a torn HDMI cord and no power cord, and like disgusting couches. Nobody went there. It was disgusting and weird. But Eagles Landing was like really formative in a lot of ways still. Kelly and I, again, we were both kind of living our own lives, busy with college, different things, and didn't have as much of a reason to see each other, but we definitely made time every week. I think we went to Wendy's every week, right? Like, I know we got meals every week, but wasn't it always Wendy's?
We went to Wendy's a lot. I don't know if it was always Wendy's.
But it was regularly Wendy's.
But it was Wendy's quite often.
And like in retrospect, I'm like, what? That's so stupid. But I'm glad we did it.
You know what I remember? It was your birthday. And we went.
Oh, yeah. That would have been the same time.
The solar eclipse. And me, you, and Cameron all went to Penn Station, and we all got lunch together, and then we all went and looked at the eclipse, and it was kind of underwhelming.
Yeah, well, because a cloud went over it right as it happened.
Yeah, but I remember the shadows looked really weird, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, it was actually really good in the sense that none of us had the proper protective eye equipment.
Yeah.
You had sunglasses, so all of us kind of borrowed yours to look.
Yeah.
But the cloud going over it right at that time meant the effect wasn't extreme, but we got to look at it. And you were right. It got like weirdly quiet because all the birds stopped chirping for a minute.
Yeah.
It was trippy. But I remember that day very fondly because that was right at the beginning of Eagles Landing. It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's a kind of a hard time to pinpoint as many stories because we basically just hung out and chatted every week, which was fantastic, but nothing, as far as I can remember, unless you have some memories, nothing really crazy happened.
No, that was when I was in Eagles Landing. That was my last year of college.
Right.
So that was like the beginning of that was just a lot of like focus, because that first part of your last year, in my opinion, is the most crazy. That's when you really have to like get it done. And then the last part of your last year can either be more of the same or it can be a little bit more relaxed. Yeah. So there was a lot I was just trying to get knocked out before the end. And, that sort of led to the end of my time in school. Because at the time I had an internship too. That was taking up a lot of my time. I remember for whatever reason, that's when I played Persona 5. It was like towards the end of towards the end of the semester in 2018, like towards my graduation.
You were like a year behind.
Yeah. So I was like playing so much Persona 5 and then I graduated and that was it. And I was done and it was time for me to leave and I left. And you know, when you graduate, you leave a lot of things behind. I mean, people in college maybe don't necessarily, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, you don't necessarily appreciate what you have when you're in it. You can only really show real, true appreciation when you don't have it anymore, like after the fact. So people in college maybe don't realize how convenient it is, how nice it is to just be able to like see your friends regularly, to live close to them, to just call on them and be like, hey, let's go do this right now. No biggie. And you could, and it was fine. I feel like that part of my life, I was the most outgoing I have ever been. And I probably ever will be again. I've become a bit of a homebody. I mean, I would blame some of that on COVID too, but, and that was 2018. So I graduated. I moved back home with my parents. You know, 2018 was actually a little bit wonky for me because I moved back to Kent in the fall. And I was working a job that I absolutely hated. I was working at Starbucks.
I was going to say, was that the Starbucks in Stowe?
Yeah, so I worked at a Starbucks in Stowe, not to dox myself or that Starbucks, but it was like,
you don't live there.
the store opened at 4:30 in the morning. We had to be there a half hour before open, and I lived about 20 minutes away.
Ugh.
Well, 15 on a good day.
Yeah.
And I would just have to wake up at like 3:30 in the morning to get ready. And it was terrible. It was awful. I was not getting enough sleep. I was barely doing anything. I remember playing Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like my only solace. And then or solace, I guess. Sorry, Dragon Age brain. But I also remember playing Kingdom Hearts 3 during that time. In that little apartment that me and and Reed shared. And then I moved back home with my parents because I didn't really have any reason to be in Kent anymore, and it was just the job was just draining me. It wasn't good for me. Like physically, it was not good for me. And really, at the time, I felt like I didn't even see my friends very much because everybody was busy. I mean, you guys were still in school. But, you know, it's just one of those things that it's like, even though maybe it wasn't the most fun and exciting part of my life, there were glimmers of like of goodness. Like I was still close to everybody, so we did still get to hang out. And like the games that I played at the time like I said, like Red Dead Redemption 2 came out and I played so much of it, and it was truly like I had so much fun playing that game, and I still play it, and I still get maybe not nostalgic for that time, but it's just a comfortable game for me. Like it's comforting because it comforted me then.
That's a very comforting game, which is crazy because it shouldn't thematically be comforting, but it is.
Yeah. And I guess like at that time in my life, my anxiety was really bad too. Like I have a lot of like health anxiety. And I just like wasn't seeing a doctor. I wasn't seeing a dentist. I wasn't seeing an eye doctor. I was just like existing literally. Which was contributing to my health anxiety, which was contributing to my anxiety. So, you know, after graduation, I think everybody feels a little bit lost. I think I felt a little bit lost for a long time. And I don't know if you experienced the same thing when you graduated.
Mine was a little less linear. I've definitely had phases of that because I got my college experience. So I graduated a year after Kelly in 2019, and like my last quote unquote semester of school, I didn't have any classes because my advisor put me a full semester ahead without telling me. So as I got close, I was like, okay, what classes do I need with my advisor? And she was like, you don't no, you're done next year. And I was just like, oh, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I wanted. But I still wanted to be around. So I decided, instead of doing like a summer internship like most people do, that I was going to find an internship in my last semester. So I worked at a job January to May as an intern, but still lived in Kent. And because it was an internship, I wasn't working super consistently. So I was, still seeing a lot of people to try to live that college experience as much as I could. But then when I graduated, literally 1 week later, I started that job as a job instead of an internship. So it was almost like I didn't have time to get lost, and my college experience almost like faded out because of that weird last semester. And like it kind of sucked because everybody else was in classes and I wasn't. And like there's nothing fun about like homework and stuff, but the experience of doing classes and stuff, it's sad to lose that. So that was just peculiar and weird. I mean, it was good to not have homework anymore, but I didn't get that lost feeling until like, I mean, it would have been years later, because I was happy with that job until COVID hit. And then there was a lot of struggles. And, because of COVID, I was like, well, I don't need to be looking for like a regular job. I just need to be making money until COVID's over.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like doing things like I was doing Uber Eats deliveries. I had some personal struggles that were going on around that same time. 2020 was like a fine year for me until like the end. And then everything kind of came to a head where like my personal stuff was going very poorly, and like my professional stuff was going very poorly, because I was like, oh, this is not like just going to end one day. And like now I have a very different job, and like I'm still kind of figuring out adulthood, and that's like I'm not going to get into that, and figuring out my personal life and stuff, but it's almost like, I mean, to tie it back, there's those connective tissues that like, thankfully, I think graduating college, sorry, I'm talking in circles, but like you talked about like how you can't appreciate things till they're over.
Mm-hmm.
And I like 90% agree with you. But the things that I'm able to are like video games, because, those are a constant, and you and this friendship and this podcast, because you lose a lot when you graduate. And now I'm able to step back and be like, what did I keep? What didn't I lose? And I think it was also kind of hard because I mean, our friendship didn't go away by any stretch. Kelly and I just didn't have the ability to see each other as much because of right after graduation, we were both busy. I think that year that you lived in Kent, we still saw each other like every week or two. But then once I graduated, it was a lot harder. And then COVID hit. And that was just like, we only knew how to see each other in person. So when COVID hit, it was like, well, that's a pause on that. And then once things kind of started to die down, we're like, oh, let's hang out. So we hung out. It was April of 2021, to jump forward a little bit. And Kelly and I probably hung out a couple times. Maybe, I think this might have been actually the first time we hung out post-COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I had like a small gathering right before this, but you and I hung out one-on-one and got dinner. We got some sushi in Cleveland. And I had been thinking about, so it's funny because the thing was Last of Us Part 1, which at the time was not called that. There were just rumors of a Last of Us remake. And I'm like, that's insane. That's so silly and so stupid. And I wanted to like talk to somebody about it in like a controlled setting almost.
Right.
And I'm like, what if I did like, because there's another video game podcast I listened to called Filthy Casuals, which I had been listening to for like a year. I started them in COVID because I would take walks, not with them, but like listen to them while I was taking walks. And it was just like a nice little comfort. But I was like, I want to do that. And like, the format's similar in the sense that like we talk about what we play, but this show's kind of more focused on news. And I wanted to do something like that. And, the person I wanted to do it with was Kelly. Like, if it wasn't Kelly, it wasn't happening. It was just, the way we bounce off each other. I was like, this is a perfect dynamic. We kind of had that experience with Cast of Us, but it was so big. And I'm like, I think a more personal one-on-one approach would be the way to go. So at this dinner, I'm like, hey, what if this? What if talking games? And I think we may have come up with a name at that dinner, but if not, soon after. What if this happened? What if we tried this? And, we did. And God, please don't go listen to those first couple episodes because they're interesting.
Yeah.
I found the unlisted YouTube upload of our test episode, which we called episode 0 at the time. Oh boy.
I was recording on a headset. I was using the microphone from a headset to record. Yeah. If that helps, if that gives you any indication of the audio quality of my recording. We
also just sound scared to speak too loudly. We are so monotone the whole time.
Yeah. I was living with my parents at the time too, so it was I didn't have my own space.
And it starts with the hello, but it's not the hello everyone. It starts with hey everyone, this is and there's just so much uncertainty. It's hilarious. But I've said it before on different anniversary. I think I usually say it at the end of the year after Game of the Year, but this podcast is such an important part of my week, It reconnects me to video games, reconnects me to my passion, and I mean, most importantly, to our friendship. I just getting to talk to somebody that you care about every week, because I love all of my friends, and I know a bunch of friends are listening. Biggest shout out to Jacob and Cameron, who I know listen every week, and they will text us about it and talk to us about what we're talking about,
Yeah.
But anybody who's ever listened, I appreciate immensely. I just feel so lucky to have this outlet, to have this opportunity, and to be able to talk video games, to talk games.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to put in words. Even if we were just speaking into the void, which we're not, but even if we were just speaking to the void, it would have all been worth it. Just because, like you were saying, it's just nice to talk to someone who's on the same wavelength as you, and it's hard to describe, but it provides so much structure to my week and my life. And everybody, whenever they see their friends who they haven't seen in a while, they all goes, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to stay in touch, blah blah blah. And it's sometimes those friendships fall by the wayside because you don't, when you become an adult, sometimes you just don't have the time. So dedicating that time every week to just talking about video games with you, I've been so incredibly grateful for, not only because I get to talk, which, I love to do, but also because I get to talk to you, and with you, which I also love to do. And the listeners, I just feel it's so, it always makes me, we joke and we laugh and, whatever, blah, 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 when we get texts from Cameron or Jacob. But it's knowing that someone has taken the time out of their day to listen to you talk about something that you're passionate about and something that you care about. It's I can never, ever properly describe how grateful and thankful I am for something like that, because everybody, and I've been very existential these past 3 episodes, but everybody on earth, we have such a limited amount of time here to dedicate any of that to someone else and to listening to them, even if it's just casual, which I'm sure it is. But even when it's casual, it's it makes me feel so, my heart is warmed. I feel incredibly grateful for this podcast and this time and your friendship and the listeners. And I don't know what else to say. I feel I just, everything comes full circle eventually. And I feel this is one of those full circle moments. I mean, we've been doing this for 100 episodes now. It's
Jeez.
If you would have told me that we would have got to 100 at the beginning, I wouldn't have believed you, because it was you try things and maybe things don't work out, or you try things and maybe you get dejected and you're kind of like, oh, well, we'll get back to it, whatever. But as someone who sometimes has a hard time staying on path with something, doing this podcast for 100 episodes has been really fulfilling for me, because sometimes I have a hard time finishing things, and sometimes I have a hard time, maintaining things. So maintaining routines, I guess. So being able to do that here has been really a joy for me personally.
Well, Kelly made me shed one tear, which I hid behind. I have like a little pop filter, and I don't even know if Kelly noticed that I was leaning behind it. That was not just comfortable. That was me hiding my face out of shame.
No shame.
It's because I cried just a little.
It's good to cry.
Yeah.
Crying's good for you.
I cry a lot, but I try not to do it when I'm on microphone on a recorded, published setting.
Well, that's okay. It's the 100th episode. If you're not allowed to cry during this episode, then you're not ever allowed to cry.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You hit the nail on the head. I knew we were doing something special pretty early on. I would say like month 3 or 4 was when I realized, like, oh, this is like really something. We're not just making this for no reason. This is good. This is really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it too. If nobody listened, I wouldn't care, because it's about how we feel about the content, and also a good excuse to talk every week about something we both know a lot about and care a lot about. So
yeah.
Sorry audience, but I'm gonna say it. I have appreciation for the audience, immense, endless appreciation, and I will never be able to thank them enough. But even more so, I have the greatest of appreciation for my, as I said, perfect co-host and one of the best friends I could possibly ask for in the world, Kelly. Because, like, I mean, you talk to me every week, and just doing that is big enough. But the fact that I said this silly idea, I said, what if we did a podcast every week? And you said, let's try it. Let's go for it. And we committed. And there's so many people try podcasts. I want to see what percentage make it to episode 100,
Yeah.
Like, we have committed to this so extremely, and I'm so proud of everything we've done. And the amount of, like, the sheer quantity of news and video games we have covered in the past 2 and change years, and 99 episodes before this. I just couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Andrew. Now I'm crying. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. I feel like I couldn't do this without you. So I'm very appreciative of you and your time and your friendship. It has changed my life for the better.
Oh.
Do it.
I want that.
Cry!
The audience is just like, shut up. We don't care about your emotions. They're just like, tell us about video game news.
Yeah.
No, I think the people that listen to this podcast do care about. I mean, we're not trying to establish some parasocial relationship, but we are simply trying to tell you about, all these different things, all these different video games, all the news. And the fact that we get to do that is so exciting. And thank you. Thank you so much for letting us do it.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, I will give you a hearty bye.